Hey everyone, welcome to the UFO Hub live stream. Today's guest is going to be Gerard Aartsen, and he's talking to me live from the Netherlands. That's why we kind of had to shift around the days a bit. Usually I'm doing interviews on Fridays, but I was more than happy to make this exception, partly because I believe it was his agent or publicist, I'm not exactly sure what the relationship is, had initially sent me an email about 4 years ago. And I wasn't doing this live then, it was mainly in person. And I had just put it to the side to get back to it later. Sure enough, 4 years later, here we are. So I'm glad it all worked out. Later on, we might have some time for Q&A. I'm going to have Gerard on for about an hour. He said it's okay if we go a little bit over, depending on how many questions might come in. If you would like to ask him a question directly, you can ask using Telegram. There's a live stream or a voice chat going on there live right now, because it's streaming on YouTube and Twitch via video and audio, and voice only on Telegram. And when the time comes, you can simply join the group and raise your hand to ask a question. Until we get to that point, you might not have Telegram, so make sure you download it either on your phone or the computer. The link for the UFO Hub group is in the description below, and there's voice chat going there right now, which you can join. So also in the description, as I always do with all the guests, Gerard's links to all his books. I believe they're translated in English, and so I always encourage people to check them out. And so without any further ado, let me bring in Gerard in. So Gerard, thanks for being on. How are you?
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me and for switching your usual days to today, so I can make it on your program. Uh, I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad we're able to work this out. And basically, let's kind of start out, especially for the first time guests. I would like to always ask him about what got him initially started, what got him into whatever field there happened to be. And so if you could give us a little bit of background information about you, and we'll start from there.
Sure. Um, it's maybe a bit of a lengthy introduction, but it all started um, when in 1977 I set out on an overland trip with two friends from Amsterdam, where well, I wasn't living in Amsterdam, but we lived in a village not far from Amsterdam. Overland trip to India, which was still possible at the time. It was before the Iranian Revolution and before the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. Um, and During that trip, I bought initially my first book by Eric von Däniken, the Swiss author, researcher, who brought to light many anomalies from around the world, on which the popular TV series Ancient Astronauts is based. Over the course of my trip, I thought it was fascinating. I bought about 6 of his books, and in the end, I was traveling with about 13 books in my backpack. It so happened that while we were in Nepal, where I spent 2 months, there were other travelers from other countries. And one of these I befriended was a guy from Iowa City, Iowa, and he was also into the same kind of stuff. So we talked a lot while we were there. We met up again on our way back, respective ways back home. He flying back to America, and me setting off on the overland trip back to Amsterdam. We met again in New Delhi, and he gave me. He lent me a copy of a book called The Yoga of Wisdom. And at the time, I wasn't, I didn't go to India to find enlightenment or a guru or anything like many other people. I was more of a social activist, basically. But that the idea of extraterrestrial visitors really spoke to me. And I don't remember if I had already read George Adamski's book, Flying Saucers Have Landed, from 1953. In any case, during that trip, also in India, one day I had a tremendous experience of oneness. Um, I think it happened in my sleep. It wasn't a vision, as far as I can recall, but it was so profound that it kept me engaged for the whole day, the next day, to the extent that I didn't speak a word for the whole day. I didn't even say good morning to my travel companions. So the day after, they asked me, "Are you all right again?" And I asked them, "Why? What's the matter? What happened?" They said, "You didn't say a word yesterday." So it was so all-consuming, the experience, and I didn't even know, what to do with it, or how to frame it in words. I wrote a long letter about it to friends at home, but that letter, that's the only letter that never arrived. And the book that I was lent by my friend from Iowa City to read on the way back, that explained uh, how everything is one, and life is really a manifestation of different degrees of consciousness, which which really made sense, or helped me make sense of that experience I had. So that's really where it started. And although I later on sort of left Eric von Däniken behind, and a year later I became involved with a group of volunteers who helped the British esotericist Benjamin Creme to spread the information about the return to the modern world of the world teacher and the masters of wisdom. That was actually, I've been involved with that for over 40 years. That also led me to the books by George Adamski and many other contactees of the 1950s. I call them the original contactees. The experience I had in India, and the book I read about the yoga of wisdom helped me understand that life is really about the evolution of consciousness. And this is interesting because only in recent years, in researching my latest book, Pioneers of Oneness, did I come across the latest findings of quantum science and system science. And these indicate the same things, they come to the same conclusion, you might say, that everything is interrelated and interconnected and interacts as a whole. And as systems grow more complex, and we might see ourselves, human beings, as a system within a larger system, in a larger organism that we call planet Earth, they manifest this growing consciousness, this growing awareness. So as we evolve, we, through history, not just individually, but also as a species, as we evolve, we are able to manifest more of the origin of life, or the source of our consciousness, and become, or get in closer contact with the source of life, and some would call it divinity, and we will be able to express more of that basic divinity, if we stick to the traditional wordings. The masters of wisdom that I just mentioned are exponents of the spiritual kingdom, the next kingdom up in nature from the human kingdom, according to the wisdom teachings, and they have been taking steps to return to the world through preparing humanity for this rather major expansion of our understanding of life. First, through the work of Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society in the late 19th century. That was expanded on very much by Alice Bailey. And the last installment, so to speak, came through Benjamin Graham, who died in 2016. He was 93 years old, I believe. So this whole set of what are known as the Ages of Wisdom teachings explain to us the true nature of life as this movement of consciousness, ever-expanding consciousness, and human beings as exponents in this process. The original contactees struck a chord when I found that in the various accounts of the original contactees, they speak, or their contacts from space speak about the same thing, the evolution of consciousness. So we have now system science and quantum science who basically say very much the same thing that the Ages Wisdom teachings have been imparting since they were reintroduced to the world in the late 19th century. And we have the accounts of the original contactees and many later contactees that all state that life is about the evolution of consciousness, or life is universal and it manifests through the evolution of consciousness. And for me, going back to your question, what triggered me, I've been so involved in the work of preparing the world for with the information that the masters, the masters and the world teacher, the master of all the masters, are returning to the world. That when I learned, I don't know if you're familiar with George Adamski, but his most famous books, well-known books, are Flying Saucers Have Landed, 1953, Inside the Spaceships, 1955, and Flying Saucers Farewell, 1961. But he wrote much more. And his very first book, 1932, I recently discovered a few years ago. But until that time, his book from 1936, Wisdom of the Masters of the Far East, was considered his first book. And when I got hold of that, it chimed almost one-on-one with the teachings that I'd been studying, the books by Madame Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and Benjamin Graham. And when I saw that connection, I started delving deeper and deeper into the accounts of the original contactees, especially when I saw there were so many correspondences in their accounts. So sorry for the lengthy introduction, but it's really how I started to become involved in this field.
No, that's quite all right. The more detailed, the better, especially if not for anyone else, then for selfish reasons for myself, since, again, this is the very first time that we are speaking together. So I wanted to ask you about, regarding these original 1950s contactees, would it be safe to say that it was kind of this assumption by these different beings that initially contacted these different, human beings, that they thought that if we convey this message to them, that this will go out to the world, and then everyone else will kind of sit down and take this into consideration? Or what was the original thought? Was there a differentiation between any of these people? Were they more well-known people? Were they just average Joes, as we call it here in America? Do you have any information regarding that? And what if there is a kind of a conclusion or a purpose to be drawn from that, which is Is that what they meant for them, to just go out and talk to everyone else on the planet about them?
Right. Yes. Well, we have to remember the context in which the original contacts happened. The context was, of course, the Cold War. There was a Cold War waging. The Second World War ended, of course, in 1945 with the victory of the Allied forces, defeating the Nazis in Germany, the militarists in Japan, and the fascists in Italy. Soon after the Second World War, unfortunately, rather than sticking together, because the Nazis were defeated by the Allied forces, the United States and the United Kingdom partnering with the Soviet Union. But soon after the end of the Second World War, both camps started to compete for global influence, for the power, dividing the world in power blocks. So we had the East Bloc, the Eastern Bloc, ruled under control of the Soviet Union, and the Western Bloc under control of the United States and NATO. This was a dangerous division, of course, because humanity had just invented the atom bomb. The hydrogen bomb was in development, this has the potential still now today of destroying our world that we live on, that is our home. And if we destroy our planet, that will have severe effects on the solar system as a whole. We tend to think of Earth as this planet that is fortunate enough to have spawned life as we know it, which we haven't been able to find anywhere else in the universe. But to the visitors from other planets, we are an integral part of the social system and the solar system. Sorry, and that is what they came to tell us through people like George Adamski, Truman Bethune, Buck Nelson, Howard Menger, and various others. The ones I just mentioned are all from the United States, but there were others in Brazil and in Europe and other parts of the world. And these were what you would call, indeed, average Joes in general, people with no particular social standing, rather simple in the sense of little formal education, for a specific reason. If they had been the President of the United States or the Queen of England or the Pope of the Catholic Church, people might have believed them based on their position in life, their status, and that goes against the prime directive, to borrow the term from the Star Trek series, that our free will is sacrosanct for not only the masters of wisdom, who are trying to impart on us the spiritual facts of life through their work, but it's also sacrosanct for the extraterrestrial visitors that come here, and they came on the wake of the first explosions and tests of the atom bombs, to warn humanity for the dangers of these new means of mass destruction, and they came to inspire us and to admonish us to work together to solve our problems, rather than to compete and to compete for territory or influence. So it's you mentioned the word abductions, but I take offense to that term, because there were no abductions. There were no accounts of abductions among the original contactees. The first case recorded case reported case of an abduction was in 1961, Betty and Barney Hill case. And we must remember that the message of the original contactees drew more and more interest from the people who were war weary. People were living at the time in the 1950s under the palpable threat of nuclear annihilation. The danger of the Russians coming, or worse, sending atom bombs to destroy our Western civilization. And the same fear, of course, existed on the other side of the divide in the Soviet Union and their satellite states. So we were living under a psychological threat of nuclear annihilation, and the visitors, the space visitors, they came to encourage and inspire common people with the hope and the need and necessity for international cooperation to settle our problems rather than through conflict. This drew so much interest, and there was a growing group. There was George Adamski gave a talk after his first book had been published. He gave a talk in Detroit in 1954 that drew 4,700 people. Naturally that got the authorities worried, governments and military, because for the massive expenditure on nuclear weapons, the government depends on the public's support. And if the public support would be diminishing, would be waning for the military expenditure, that would mean they would feel weakened in the face of the Soviet threat, and vice versa. So the answer from the government, military, maybe some shady agencies in the government, was to cause confusion among the public, cause fear and confusion, fear of the space visitors. This was, implemented through cooperating with Hollywood. There was a continuous stream of very popular films about alien invasions, and in the end, they started to, the contactees were ridiculed, of course. There were scientific findings. The first probes were sending back data that show that there's no life possible on planets like Mars and Venus that the original contactees said their visitors came from, which of course is true in the sense of life as we know it. But at the same time, we now know that according to astrophysics calculations of the mass of the universe, astrophysics itself acknowledges that it cannot account for 90% of the mass of the universe. 90% is invisible to us, to our instruments, to our eyes. So it just goes to show that there may well be lots of things going on, even in our solar system, that we cannot see. So in order to secure public support for the huge amounts of money, public money spent on the military and the further development of nuclear weapons, it was decided to spread disinformation about the visitors and the contactees, to the point that by the end of the 1950s, more and more people began to doubt their stories, and in order to finalize, the final blow was the stories of abductions. The real visitors from space they do not infringe people's free will. So they will not abduct anyone. Abduction implies doing something against people's or without people's consent. And according to the Benjamin Graham, esotericist, but also a contactee in the 1950s himself, none of that happens with true visitors from space. People, I'm not trying to deny people's experience, personal experience, but people who've had an abduction experience or experience of having been experimented on, things like that, I believe are the victims of staged experiences, maybe under the influence of hypnosis or drugs or a combination, and made to believe that this was done to them by space visitors or aliens, to use the popular term. But true contact is also always based on consent, and even if people, after the fact, experience fear for the unknown or ridicule from friends around them when they share their story, the visitors from space will never infringe our free will. So that's it's a bit again. There's so many things about the context in which this happened, which I feel are important to know, because the people that I mentioned, the original contactees, have been ridiculed, and because of the disinformation and misinformation that has been planted since the second half of the 1950s, there's so much confusion about contact with visitors from space and their intentions, that the original message and the real intentions have become clouded, if not obscured entirely.
Gerard, what I wanted to ask, these different contactees, and I don't know how important this as to the relevance in comparison to the message, but did they ever say where they're from, and if there's any kind of now many years later, we know some claim that there's some relations between some of these visitors and the human race. Would you be able to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, the original contactees didn't hesitate to say that, and they were even taken on craft, sometimes invited on craft to visit their planet. They said they were from Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn mainly, the disinformation campaign that started, the campaign to ridicule the contactees, caused some of them, even in the 1950s, especially the second half, to withhold that information, and perhaps their contacts from space suggested, maybe not really important that you say where we are from. And they came up with fantasy names like Clarion and other names, because it's not really about being right for the space visitors. The importance is the fact that they're trying to let us know that we are one human species, one human race, and brothers and sisters of the same human race who share the same planet. And it's crucial for our survival that we see that fact and acknowledge that, accept that fact, and act on it. Act on the fact that science is now also giving us that we are one, intricately connected, and what one person does ripples throughout the planet through in behavior and acts of our fellow human beings. And that's what is important. Not so much if contacts are from this planet or that planet, but the original contactees, George Adamski, Truman Bethune, I believe Howard Menger, Buck Nelson. In any case, they flat out said, no, I was contacted by someone from Venus or Saturn or Mars.
So, can I? Would it be? Because sometimes, we're open to talk about any of the books that you have. I know you and I talked about it earlier, but maybe I might not have mentioned it to the guests watching. So there was initially when I received information about you, and of course me setting it aside for 4 years foolishly, there was a picture in them that was, I guess, to be a claim, whether I think it was either a recreation or a picture. Would you be able to maybe talk about that? It was claiming that it was taken, I guess, within this craft.
Yes, I just changed my background to show one of these photographs. These are actual photographs that have come forward through an Italian case of contacts, also that started in the 1950s. It was a case of mass contacts with, in the end, over 100 Italians. Not so much with people from other planets landing and inviting them on board, but with people from other planets who were living and working in underground bases around Italy. This has become known as the friendship case. And many photographs and film images, we didn't have video cameras then, but were taken by the participants in this friendship case, or amicizia case in Italian. Started in 1956. And in 1958, I believe, October 1958, one of these craft landed somewhere along the coast in Italy, one of the craft of these space contacts, and two people were invited on board to take photographs, and these were published in a book by Alberto Perego, who used to be a diplomat before the Second World War, was retired after the end of the war, and he was also the main contact. George Adamski had set up an international network of contacts in various countries, including Japan and Italy and other European countries, Mexico. And Alberto Perego was his main contact in Italy. Perego obtained these photographs from the two people who were invited on board the craft. And behind me now is one of those photographs of the interior of a flying saucer. They've been unknown for many years because they only appeared in a book. I believe it was published in 1961. I'm not entirely sure now. In Italian. In Italy, and never outside Italy until I used them. I found them, and I had them digitally restored somewhat and enlarged to include in my book Here to Help UFOs and Space Brothers, in which I have a chapter that's called Inside the Spaceships, as a tribute to George Adamski's book by the same title. And these photographs, it was a series of photographs sort of going around the round interior of the ship, showing the different panels and seats and things. Fascinating.
Gerard, what I wanted to, I guess I'm trying to decide which way to go regarding this one, whether or not we want to. Do you want to maybe go more into some of the details and things you covered in your latest book?
Yes, could do, certainly. Because I think it's also important to point out that the wisdom that speaks through the accounts of the original contactees is, George Adamski's book Inside the Spaceships that I just mentioned is a prime example of that. Is completely in line with the wisdom teachings that have been conveyed to us by our own human elder brothers. The space visitors are often called, certainly by the original contactees, the space brothers, but humanity's own elder brothers, the masters of wisdom, who have, who started out as humans, just like us, but have gone ahead of us on the path of evolution back to the source, and have sort of completed that path here on Earth and become masters over their lower nature and masters over themselves, and therefore are now known as the masters of wisdom. Their wisdom is completely in line with what the original contactees were asked to convey to us, except through the efforts of Madame Blavatsky in the late 19th century and Alice Bailey in the first half of the 20th century, and Benjamin Graham in the second half of the 20th century. We have much more detailed teachings, volume upon volume of teachings, ready for anyone who's interested in the true nature of life and the meaning of life, so to speak, to be picked up and studied, and more than studied, to be practiced, to be put into practice, and again to reconnect with our source, so that we may grow in understanding of the true nature of life, the true facts of life. So in my latest book, Pioneers of Oneness, what I've done is show how the latest findings of systems science and quantum science were already conveyed in the teachings that have come through Madame Blavatsky, who first introduced the notion to the modern world of the evolution of consciousness, through the kingdoms of nature. The book I just mentioned, that I was lent on my journey back from India to Amsterdam it was March 1978. It could be seen as a summary, almost very concise, but very interesting nonetheless, of how it was called mind in that book, but consciousness really can be found even in the mineral kingdom. It can be found in the vegetable and the animal kingdom, and of course in the human kingdom it becomes self-consciousness. And in each of these subsequent kingdoms, successive kingdoms, we find consciousness or awareness of mind somewhat expanded, and it expands the movement, possibilities for movement of the elements that make up that kingdom. So as I said, system science, especially through the books by Professor Erwin Laszlo, very famous, brilliant scientist, Hungarian-born, but has been living in Italy for many years, founder of the Club of Budapest. He shows how systems evolve as clusters of vibration in an ocean of possibilities, an ocean in which each composing element is a bundle of energy, a cluster of vibrations. And George Adamski described, almost in exactly the same words, the nature of life and consciousness in his very first book, The Invisible Ocean, in 1932. I mean, that's, at the very least, that's astounding. Similarly, that whole notion of the evolution of consciousness and the really the non-existence of building blocks of matter, that quantum science now tells us, is is a fact. There are not, when you really look into the nature of matter, science doesn't find building blocks of matter, because matter or atoms are infinitely divisible, can be divided infinitely. Um, and Madame Blavatsky said the same thing already in a book in The Secret Doctrine in 1888. So these things that science is now finding were already known and expressed in the wisdom teachings, and that's what I've brought together in Pioneers of Oneness. I'm showing the corroborations and the similarities, and on top of that, I present the same information from the accounts, and sometimes a bit more from the accounts of the contactees, to show us, show us the way forward as in terms of solving our problems. We are beset. The world is beset by problems. COVID now, the pandemic, is merely a symptom. It's not the cause of problems. It's a symptom of our lost connection with not only with nature and our destruction of nature and our relentless pillaging of the natural resources of our planet, but also of destruction and the wasteful overconsumption and pollution of our own home, planetary home. And the contactees, the message from space, from the Space Brothers, has been that we are interconnected, that only when we work together can we overcome our problems. And the same message has come especially through Benjamin Graham, from when he started this mission in 1974 until his death in 2016, that there's more than enough to go around on the planet for everyone. We have enough food for no one to go hungry. We have enough natural resources for everyone to be clothed and housed and educated and given proper health care and sanitary conveniences, etc., so that we could eradicate hunger and poverty and unnecessary illness, if only we would realize that we are one human family and we need to share the bounty of this planet equally and equitably, so that everyone, every man, woman, and child may live a decent human life. And of course, in our current systems, our current structures, that are based on competition and separativeness, that's not possible, because we are now, going after the most profit and greatest wealth, each individually, and it's destroying the environment, it's destroying the planet, and it's destroying the social fabric. It's destroying our society and our civilization. And of course, we need to realize humanity, the world, the planet, the solar system. We're at the end of a cycle in the manifestation of life on this planet. Life goes in cycles, evolves in cycles, and we have come to the end of the cycle of Pisces, the Age of Pisces, that was inaugurated 2,000 years ago with the teaching coming through Jesus. Jesus didn't come to found the Christian religion necessarily. The Christian religion developed out of his teaching and what people did with it. But his teaching was basically the same as every other teaching by a major figure, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, Vyasa, Rama, and all the other names that now still remain with us through mythology and legends. But all these messages, these teachings really relate to how we may reconnect with our source, our divine source. And having come at the end of the Age of Pisces, in which humanity has learned, has acquired the qualities of individuality and idealism, the structures in which we live are imbued with these qualities. And we see that in extreme competition and extreme idealism, to the point where people are willing to blow themselves up for their beliefs. But at the same time, the solar system has moved away from the constellation of Pisces, from which the energies have come in the past 2,000 years, to which we have responded by building the structures as we know them now. And we are now in alignment with the age of Aquarius. And the keynotes of Aquarius are synthesis and oneness. Our structures are not built to manifest these new qualities, so we see them crumbling. Our political system, our science, our mainstream science, our economy, our financial system, all of them are really not functioning anymore. They're propped up. We're keeping up the appearances of it functioning, or else all hell will break loose, or so fear the people in power. And of course, there's plenty of people in economic power who don't like to see their wealth diminishing or their power lessened. But the structures are crumbling. They are giving way to the new powerful energies of oneness and synthesis. And we see, and I show that also in my book, we see a groundswell of people realizing their oneness, not only oneness with the rest of the human race, but also with the planet as the larger organism. And although on the outside, the world may seem polarized, on the inside, behind the scenes, what is not reported in the media, because the media don't see it, except perhaps this morning in the Guardian newspaper, the English newspaper, I read an interesting report stating that the world is really not as divided as appearances have us believe. So, and of course for instance, one of the things that I use in my book as an example to show how humanity is growing in its awareness of its oneness are the social movements. It started with people organizing for labor rights, and we had movements for women's rights, women's voting rights, children's rights, ending in civil rights and human rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is like a crescendo of this awareness that we can only, we are all in it together, and together we stand, or separately we fall. So, as a response, in reaction to this growing sense of oneness, we see other forces who are bound to lose the power that they have currently over our structures and over large parts of humanity. They have made us believe that only through market forces, competition, can we have a good life, which is nonsense, because millions and millions of people, especially since decolonization, have died unnecessarily, of malnutrition, of starvation, just because we need money to buy food, to rent or buy a house, or to get healthcare. While on the other planets, in our solar system, Mars and Venus, everything belongs to the human race on that planet. And everything is available for free so that everybody is able to develop their talents, to grow and contribute their talents to the development of civilization. That's why their civilizations are so far ahead of ours. So that's really the story I'm telling, based on science, based on the corroborations of science with the Age of Wisdom teachings and the accounts of the contactees in my latest book.
Gerard, in about, excuse me, Gerard, in about 10 minutes, we'll be coming up on the 1 hour mark. I wanted to ask, there was one question I wanted to ask you and then go into some Q&A. Would that be okay with you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so right now we have Alio waiting in Telegram. I will get to you as soon as Gerard has answered this one question, and there's a few in the chat as well. So for those in chat and for those that are new, if you can please do me a favor and put 3 asterisks, asterisks, I can't speak today, before your question, so it pops out at me easier, and then I know to convey to Gerard. And that's regarding any kind of chat, whether you're in YouTube or Twitch. And Alio already had raised the hand in Telegram, which is exactly what I need to add him to my queue. So the question I have for you, and I apologize if I'm jumping around different subjects, to conclude regarding this mention that you had in some of the text that was sent to me that I call the emergence of Maitreya. And if you could go maybe a little bit into that.
Yes, Maitreya is the personal name of the world teacher. And the world teacher is the master of all the masters. He is the eldest brother of humanity. And traditionally, every new age is inaugurated by the world teacher, a world teacher. It's a function. Of course, listeners will be familiar with the religious notions of the return of the respective teachers in these religions. Like the Christians are waiting for the second coming, and the Jews are waiting for the Messiah, and the Buddhists expect the fifth Buddha, and they also use the same name, Maitreya. Hindus expect the 10th incarnation of Vishnu or Kalki avatar, and some sections of Islam also expect the return of a teacher known as the 12th Mahdi, the Imam Mahdi. But these are all the same notion of a new teacher coming to introduce, to inaugurate a new age. And so it has been throughout human history, which actually, according to the teachings, goes back 18.5 million years on this planet. And the names I mentioned earlier, Krishna, Buddha, Rama, Vyasa, Hercules, Hermes, and all these sometimes now mythological figures were at one time the world teacher, even if, at certain times, for instance, at the time of Buddha or Jesus, the world was not quite as interconnected as it is now through, modern media and modern transport. But the teacher, every age is inaugurated by a teacher to inspire humanity and to bring humanity a new aspect of reality and divinity, because divinity is reality. And Maitreya is the personal name of the individual who is currently the world teacher. 2,000 years ago, he worked through his disciple Jesus. Jesus was at the time a disciple of a certain degree, the third degree initiate, not himself a master yet. Just like Benjamin Graham and Alice Bailey and Madame Blavatsky were disciples of the masters of wisdom. Jesus agreed to for his body and his consciousness to be used by the world teacher at the time, the Christ in Christian terms, from the baptism in the River Jordan until the crucifixion. Now, that's when the Christ worked through the body, worked through Jesus as his vehicle in the world, and gave his teachings. This time, at the beginning of the Aquarian Age, according to Benjamin Graham, the world teacher has found a way to come back himself, not through by overshadowing a disciple, but he created a body of manifestation that will stay with us and will be indestructible and stay with us in the world for the duration of the Age of Aquarius. In this Age of Aquarius also, of course, we will know for a fact the brotherhood, not only the brotherhood of man on this planet, but also our brotherhood with the people on other planets. And there will be open contact. And we will see the spaceships coming in and landing and people coming out, stepping out. Maitreya has been, according to Benjamin Graham, has been in the world since 1970. He didn't come from another planet, but he, just like all the masters of wisdom who withdrew from the world, they were the philosopher kings in the Atlantean civilizations until its final destruction, which is when they withdrew to the mountain and desert areas of the world and left humanity to its own devices to come to this point where we are ready, according to the masters, to be reconnected with our elder brothers and especially the reality of the spiritual nature of life, the evolution of consciousness, excuse me. The masters, Maitreya, the world teacher, is not coming alone. He has returned from his abode in the Himalayas in July 1977. Has been working behind the scenes in the world since then. He's initiated changes, inspired changes such as the release of Nelson Mandela in South Africa and the transition from the apartheid government to the multicultural democracy that it is now. Far from perfect, but there's no perfect democracy in the world at all, anywhere. But of course, it's a whole stretch better than the apartheid regime. Maitreya inspired the establishment of the Brandt Commission in 1980, that was set up by former German Chancellor Willy Brandt, who was the first to find a political consensus about reforms in international trade and international relations in order to reduce the tensions that arose because of the unnecessary gap between rich and poor, north and south, the wealth gap. That wealth gap still exists, but now it exists not just on a global level, but within every country. So Maitreya has been working behind the scenes and continues to work. And he's not coming alone when he steps forward into the public eye, but he will come initially with a group of 14 masters of wisdom. There are many masters of wisdom on this planet who remain on this planet. Many people, individuals who reach the status or the stage, I should say, of having mastered their lower nature and become a master of wisdom, move on to higher planets for their continued evolution. But many remain behind, stay behind to help inspire and mentor humanity in its evolution. And of course, we are now at a very crucial and very dangerous junction in time, in history, and we need all the help we can get. And the world teacher and the masters of wisdom are here to help us, and they get help in turn from the space brothers from other planets, similarly advanced beings from other planets, to hopefully inspire humanity to pull together and realize our brotherhood, and the fact that we all need to, we all deserve to survive, and the only way we can survive is by sharing, by creating justice through sharing the resources and the food that is available on this planet, that the planet provides for us bountifully. And by creating justice, we will ensure and secure global peace, and prevent ourselves from blowing up the planet. So that, in a nutshell, is the information behind the emergence of Maitreya. Benjamin Graham was asked to generate as much enthusiasm and interest initially. So and the first possibility for Maitreya to step forward into the public eye, according to Benjamin Graham, was in 1982, spring 1982. At the time, the media didn't spend the energy, didn't give the attention as representatives of the attention of humanity as a whole, to allow Maitreya to come forward in a way that would have been effective. So Maitreya was forced to postpone his emergence. We are now seeing something that Benjamin Graham has been talked about during his whole mission, the collapse of our systems and our structures. And as this happens, and as our economies and our financial systems will come to a standstill or start to crumble to the point where they don't no longer function, the information is that that is when Maitreya and the masters will step forward, and this day will be known as the Day of Declaration, when Maitreya will declare who he really is, and show that he comes to fulfill not only the expectations of all the religious teachings, but the hopes of all of humanity. And as he explains, as he gives his credentials in a worldwide broadcast, he will also pour out the energy of love, of which he is the embodiment on this planet, through a telepathic connection with all of humanity. And Benjamin Graham has said that it will feel like Maitreya embraces each and every one of us individually, and we will have this tremendous sense of oneness. And of course, after it will be such a massive spiritual experience that enough people will be inspired to start working for the salvation of the world and the healing of the planet, and of course the creation of justice and peace in this world. So that's the information, the story behind Benjamin Graham's information, which I've been involved with for well over 40 years to spread around the world wherever people would hear it. And of course, in my books, I've been sort of finding corroborations through the accounts of the contactees, and now also modern science.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so let's go to Alio. I hope he's been still there. Alio, you are unmuted on my end. Unmute yourself on yours, and go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I actually had just pushed the button kind of by accident there, clicking around to see, where are the video buttons and where's everybody at and where's the chat, and I clicked that and had listened in, and
If you didn't mean to, that's okay, because we're actually live on YouTube and Twitch. This is just a voice only. And to, of course, talk to
Oh,
the guest
okay.
directly. If you want to take your chance to ask a question now, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll move on.
Okay. Yeah, I had a very divergent perspective than he did. I mean, his perspective is amazing. I mean, as far as the evolution, the direction of the planet, and our responsibility and what we need to do, and everything, and the turning over of the ages, and the point that tipping point that we're at now. But I didn't want to come in with a divergent conversation, but I just wanted to, I don't want to sidetrack too far, but may I ask the guest if he has studied the Allies of Humanity briefings?
I know of the title. I've seen the title pop up on the internet, but I haven't studied them, I must say.
Okay.
So I can't say
Because so
can't say
much
anything about it or how it relates to the wisdom teachings.
Right. The messages from the Allies of Humanity briefings relate also to the evolution of our planet and what we need to become real fast, what we need to become individually and as a species to deal with the not only our own challenges, but the extraterrestrial engagement, that this age of extraterrestrial engagement that we're entering in a very complex universe. And the Allies of Humanity briefings, you back up the Allies of Humanity briefings in everything that you say about this, the direction and the evolution and the spiritual connection and how manifesting that in the world. And yes, we have to evolve real quick, but there's a perspective on the extraterrestrial presence that would really challenge that the perspective that any of them are here at this time to bring us salvation.
Ali, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is mainly just to do some quick Q&A. At least Gerard got to answer your question. I'm sorry, maybe during open lines, please feel free to log in and share more.
Contact information, I hope. And you answered my question. You had not read the briefings from the Allies of Humanity. And I hope I can have a further private conversation with you someday after you have.
Well, also, Alio, I did an interview with Reed Summers, and so he extensively covered that too. So I hope you get a chance to check it out. Well, thank you so far, and hopefully we talk soon. Okay, I have the other question is from Marie Antone, and forgive me, it's a bit lengthy, so I'll just there's some names I'm not too familiar with here. Basically, starts out saying Master Hilarion, Starlight Elixir, and Cosmic Healing warns about beings from Zeta Reticuli, the Bernard Star, Dragonis, and Regal. They have negative effects on humans. What do you think about it?
I must say, I hear the only name I seem to recognize is the something reticular. Mm-hmm. And I know the only thing I can say in this connection is that I'm aware that many people think that we are being contacted and visited by people from far away galaxies or star systems. And according to my information, based on my research, this is the contacts are really from within our own system. See, the universe, of course, is also a set of smaller and greater systems and clusters. Human beings are, as far as we know, the first clusters with self-consciousness, and together we form like an organ in the living organism that is planet Earth, and planet Earth in turn is an organ in the living organism that is the solar system, and the solar system in turn is part of the Milky Way, or first another larger system with Sirius at its center, and so forth and so forth. for any teaching to be meaningful, it can't be, if of course there are people who believe that that's the case, but I don't think it makes much sense. If God, the creator, the absolute, were to connect with me or you directly as an individual, it would blow us to pieces, because that consciousness is so far beyond what we can conceive even, or what we can absorb, that it wouldn't make any sense for such consciousness to and it wouldn't have, if he would even register it. So things need to be stepped down, and for any meaningful inspiration or information to be conveyed, I think the source will be not too far, will be just the next step up. So in our case, that will be the higher planets in our system. I know many people have other beliefs, and of course they are entitled to that, but this is the information that I have. And the other names that the questioner mentioned are really, there's really nothing I can say about that, because I'm not familiar with them. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for that. Gerard, how many more questions could I ask you? I'm trying to be respectful of your time. If we have a few, do you want me to do two more, or what do you say?
Yeah, sure, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, the next question is from Frank, asking, when Maitreya or masters return, will they be spirit, man, or angelic? Will they be as they were in the past, or have new bodies?
The masters, when you become a master of wisdom, when you've completed the path of evolution on this planet through the last stage of the path is called the path of initiation, and which is symbolized for us in the New Testament. There are 5 stages. The first stage, the first initiation, is symbolized by the birth of the Christ child in the manger. And that's symbolic for the birth of Christ consciousness in our heart, or the reawakening of the Christ consciousness in our heart. Spiritual heart, by the way. The second stage, the second initiation, is symbolized by the baptism in the River Jordan, which is, an indication of the control of our emotional life. The first initiation is control over our physical life. The second, symbolized by the river, baptism over our emotional life. The third stage is symbolized by the transfiguration on the mount, and that symbolizes the control over our mental body, our mental instrument. The fourth initiation, when these vehicles are integrated, the physical, emotional, and mental, we become the fully integrated personality through which our spiritual aspect, our soul, can function. And we see that in great initiates in this world. And the fourth initiation is symbolized by the crucifixion in the New Testament, which is when we give up all the lower bodies in order to release the soul from the physical confinements. And the fifth initiation is the resurrection of the spirit from matter, and that is symbolized, of course, by the resurrection of the dead body of Jesus. But and although he's physical, it's really to do with the spirit conquering matter. The masters, when they once you've taken the fifth initiation, and I don't speak from experience here, this is based on the teachings that I've studied and the information from Benjamin Graham. When you become a master of wisdom by having taken the fifth initiation, you no longer need to reincarnate to continue your path on the path of evolution on this planet. Then you are really free from this planet, but you can choose, as I mentioned before, you can choose to stay on this planet to help and inspire humanity. And the way many masters do that is by creating, they continue to live on this planet in their etheric bodies. They don't need a physical body. But when masters manifest in the world, and many of them, or several of them have, we know the Count of Saint-Germain, who was very well known in the European courts in the 17th century, 18th century. They create a body of manifestation, and they can bring together the matter, the particles, and hold that together in the shape of a human body with which they live in the world. And you could meet one and not know it's a master. And of course, they can also show themselves in an aspect that is undeniably of such a high spiritual nature that you will just fall on your knees in awe, even though the masters are not known to strive for that effect. So the masters who are returning, they will have a body of manifestation, just as Maitreya, who has a unique body of manifestation, because he has created it in such a way that it will last for 2,500 years, more or less. So I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you for that. As you were speaking, I was looking over, and majority of the chat is very vivid, and they're all talking to each other. But there's an entirety of 3 questions that I feel are very good ones. Would it be okay if I just ask you those 3, and I promise that would be it?
Yes, if we can keep it to those 3, then sure, yes.
All right, thank you. So first out of 3 says, I don't know if this is an English speaker or just a misspelling, says, who Joshua, and has he heard of the Sumerian Tablets explaining the Jesus story, what he thinks of Book of Ra, Law of One?
I've heard of the Sumerian Tablets and the modern interpretation by, what's his name again? Sechin, Zachariah Sechin, I believe his name was.
Yeah, correct.
And I know that many people see that as the final word on the creation of the world or the universe and the reality of space visitors. For me, Sechin's interpretation is just that, an interpretation, especially since he, as far as I'm aware, ignores or is not familiar with, I'm not sure, the wisdom teachings that have come to us through Madame Blavatsky. So I personally do not attach the same significance to the Sumerian Tablets. The other names were mentioned in the question. I'm not familiar with. I'm sorry.
Okay. Then the second question is from B. Delfontaine, asking Gerard, have you considered that darker extraterrestrial forces would be very capable of persuading people that they are part of our spiritual prophecies? Shouldn't we be more cautious?
Yes, of course, it's a concern that I often hear when I speak of the benign nature of the space visitors. And of course, since we're talking about evolution and the evolution of consciousness, it goes without saying that besides the higher planets where life has evolved beyond the stage that we are at on planet Earth, there are also planets where life has not evolved to the stage yet where we are at. And where motives may be darker than the visitors that I've been speaking of. But we must remember that, my research has shown that there are three sources who independently have stated that since the 1950s, because we are now in this crucial stage in our history, in our evolution on this planet, the visitors from Venus and Mars especially have put around our planet a ring of protection. This was first mentioned by Wilbert Smith, the Canadian contactee, in an article in 1958. It was also stated by the American scientist who worked alongside some extraterrestrial scientists in a lab in America, Michael Wolff. And it was also confirmed by Benjamin Creme in his first book. He called it a ring of light, which keeps the more, the less evolved people from other planets who do have the capacity of interplanetary flight out of our system, out of our world for the time being, as we go through this very difficult transition from the Age of Pisces to the Age of Aquarius. Because we have enough to deal with. It's not so much the darker forces from other planets that we have to fear, but the darker forces on our own planet that try to keep us from uniting and from recognizing our oneness. The forces of materiality have a place, according to the wisdom teachings, in keeping the matter aspect of this planet intact, or any other planet. But they should not, that's the evolutionary arc of life, but they should not spill over, or when they do spill over onto the evolutionary arc, they have this very negative effect, which we now see, trying to take advantage of our separatist tendencies, our materialist tendencies throughout the world. And the sooner we manage to overcome our separatism and our divisions and our competition and our conflicts, the easier it will be to move into the new age and build a new civilization based on justice and freedom.
Thank you for that. So the last question is from Fab22, asking if Gautama Buddha prophesied that Maitreya would incarnate in 5,000 years. Why is there reports of him since 1970s? Thank you.
Yes, the prophecies of when a certain teacher would return differ. Even within Buddhism, you will find different interpretations of the same statements, that is inherent in prophecies. Even the masters, we have been told, cannot make very accurate prophecies, only give general indications of time frames or windows of opportunity, because it all depends on our readiness, on our perceptiveness. How ready are we to respond to certain new energies or new ideas? The same is true for the space visitors. At one point, mystics took it upon themselves to declare that they were channeling the information coming from space from discarnate beings, making all kinds of beautiful prophecies. But it's not possible to put specific dates or numbers of years on prophecies. It's all to do with cycles and energetic influences and our humanity's response to those energies. The earliest opportunity, the earliest possibility for Maitreya to step forward, according to Benjamin Creme and his master, was the spring of 1982. Humanity appeared not ready, so the emergence was postponed. There have been several other opportunities at which time humanity's attention was diverted. For instance, one time I remember by the Falkland War in Argentina. I don't remember what year that was exactly. I think it was 1988 or something. So the masters depend on our readiness, because when the world teacher returns to this world that is so full of distractions, with instant gratification or instant gratification, um, you know, there it would undermine the effectiveness of the event, because it will be a historical event, of course, when the world teacher for a new age steps forward. And Maitreya and the masters need to be certain that humanity is at its most receptive for the best possible result from their, the energies and their efforts. The aim is, the Maitreya and the masters are not coming to save the world for us. The Space Brothers are not here to bring salvation. We can only salvage ourselves. We can only save ourselves. But Maitreya and his energies, the masters and the Space Brothers, they are here to inspire us with hope and vision for the future, and with the transference of the energies that they bring, they will set us into action. And so therefore they need humanity at its highest receptivity for this event to take place. And when that will take place, Maitreya, we were told by Benjamin Graham's master, weighs the situation from moment to moment, and if he's the eldest brother, if indeed he is the eldest brother of humanity, if indeed he is the individual who has evolved out of the human kingdom, who has now reached the highest level of consciousness that is attainable on this planet, then we must trust his judgment in the time that he sets for his emergence.
Gerard, thank you for that, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I know it's getting up in time,
You're very welcome.
late where you are. So just I guess as a conclusion, if you could just leave any websites or places where people could find out more about you. As I mentioned earlier, the link for the bgapublications.nl is in the description below. And if there's anything else you'd like to add, please do.
Yes, that's the link for my website, where I keep track of all my publications, articles, and books and websites. I would like to point out, if people have heard of George Adamski and they've heard that he was a con man or a fraud, then I would like to invite them to visit my website, the Adamski case, the-adamski-case.nl, where I've collected all the facts, placed them in context, so that people can see for themselves that almost everything that detractors say about Adamski has been misconstrued or conflated with things that were not correct. So there's the online monument that I've erected for George Adamski, and on my website bgapublications.nl, people will find the titles to my books, which are all available online from Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the other online outlets. And my latest book is Pioneers of Oneness, which brings together the Age of Wisdom teachings and the latest findings from 21st century science, and underpins really the accounts of the contactees of the 1950s, especially. So I would recommend that, but that's me.
All right. Well, Gerard, thank you again. Everyone else watching, I appreciate you joining us today. Next week on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central Time, we're going to have open lines. We'll give you an opportunity to call in and share some of your stories. Gerard, a pleasure. I hope we can do this again sometime. And until next time.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Adnan. I'm certainly willing to join you again whenever you have a slot.
Good deal. All right, everyone, take care.